Title: The Uncrowned King. Year: 103,333,333. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Elithar knew no king, was only ministers, masquerading in shadows, trading secrets for silence and law for leverage. Every moral choice came priced. Every honest soul paid in shame. But then came a man with no title, no house, only silence. He walked the city with the calm so vast that even the sirens quieted. They called him mad, then monk, then monster. But the child of drought, a girl who had not spoken since her parents were executed, saw him and followed. He taught her nothing, only listened, and one night she whispered, "To understand others, become fluent in your own silence." The man smiled and vanished. Chapter 2. That smile began to echo. The city's power brokers grew uneasy. Reports surfaced, deals collapsing, assassins pausing, judges weeping in court. None could be traced, but always at the edge of failure stood a figure with no crown, the uncrowned king. He disrupted corruption not with blade or bomb, but with presence. He'd appear in secret trials, stare through masks, and leave behind questions that could not be silenced. The child of drought, now grown, carried his legacy in parchment and breath. She wrote books of silence, and cities read. Chapter 3. The ministers hunted him, offered gold for his voice. He offered none. They tried to shame him. He bowed. They tried to kill him. He bowed again. And the people followed. The uncrowned king never ruled, but his absence became guidance. And on the walls of the highest tower, carved not in gold but soot, read the words: "To understand others, become fluent in your own silence." Now Melithar no longer trades in secrets. It listens, and the child of drought, now its chancellor, never shouts. She simply remembers. Title: The Scarred Envoy. Year: 103,205,127.8. Year: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. By Wrath was a city of courts and contracts, justice sold in scrolls and favors. Failures were punished not with chains, but with obscurity. If all meant to vanish, the scarred envoy had vanished once. Branded a traitor for brokering peace that cost a noble his pride, she was cast into the ruins beneath the city. But she survived, not by clawing upward, but by walking deeper. There, in the heart of the hollow tree, an ancient courtroom swallowed by roots, she found the remnants of forgotten laws and those who still believed in them. She returned, not to reclaim honor, to remind them who they were. Approval sought is self-forgotten, she whispered to the assembly. Chapter 2. They laughed. She bowed, then began revealing their own scrolls, contracts forged in greed, hidden rulings, secrets sealed in wax and ego. The hollow tree opened its doors. It became a court of second chances. Criminals found redemption. Victims found voice. The heart became a beacon. But the assembly retaliated, smeared her name, offered reward for her silence. She refused, again and again. Chapter 3. Years passed. The envoy never stopped. Even when her face was forgotten again, her cause was not. Pirate shifted, not in revolution, but in realization, one contract at a time. Now, at the base of the central spire, carved into a door that never locks, approval sought is self-forgotten. And in the hollow tree, the court still stands, not perfect, but rooted. And the envoy, her scars have faded, but her message does not. Title: The Keeper of Forbidden Names. Year: 103,076,922.8. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Estimar carved its laws in salt and sang them at dawn. Every morning, the chants rang out over the valley, rules repeated, names erased, stories overwritten in tradition. No one questioned the rituals, though one dared, until the keeper of forbidden names returned. She had once been a child of Estimar, banished for daring to speak her mother's outlawed name during morning song. She had wandered far, gathering names deemed dangerous, stories buried for convenience. Now she walked barefoot through the city square, whispering truths to those who had forgotten how to hear. The unfound shepherd, a desert guide lost in exile, heard her whisper and remembered his sister. He followed. Chapter 2. The elders called her a poison, but her voice was soft, not defiant and biting. She asked only one thing of those who stopped to listen: whose story did you forget to question? The chants began to falter. One boy refused to sing. One elder wept during the litany. The unfound shepherd began writing new verses, ones that asked, not told. A small fire was lit in the plaza, not in rebellion, in remembrance. Chapter 3. The city didn't fall. It woke. Self was replaced with play, flexible, molded each year. New names joined the morning song. Old ones were sung in lament, not fear. And in the central square, etched into the base of the sunrise pillar, now reads, "Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it releases you from its chain." The keeper still walks, but she no longer whispers. She sings, and Estimer listens. Idle, the memory without a host. Here, 102,948,717.5. Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the Kingdom of Solherin. Names were more than identity, they were destiny. Each child received a title at birth, etched into the marble wall of the Temple of Continuance. Changing one's name was a crime. Forgetting it was treason. The memory without a host had no name. She was found as a child, cradled in the hollow of an oak, burned from the inside out, her lips sealed and her eyes wide with knowing. Raised in silence, she grew into a scribe, tasked with recording the fates of others. But the clockmaker beneath the lake, a fugitive philosopher whose inventions were time itself, taught her truth forbidden by law. To walk your truth is to risk exile and find your true kin in the wilderness. Chapter 2. One day, she stopped writing. She began erasing, and in the erasure, new stories formed. Of those who didn't want their fates, of those who rewrote them, of those who disappeared and became more. She left the temple. The walls cracked. The names screamed. Solherin declared her a threat. She smiled and walked into exile. Chapter 3. The clockmaker met her on the shore of the Black Lake. Together, they constructed the archive of unwritten fates, a floating sanctum where names drifted freely, chosen, not assigned. The exiled came, the lost returned, and the kingdom began to fray, not from war, from awakening. Solherin's marble wall now lies submerged, its name slowly eroding beneath rain and time. Above the archive, on a sail made from parchment and ash, the only words that remain. To walk your truth is to risk exile and find your true kin in the wilderness. And now, even the nameless find their place, and choose it. Title, the wind-worn stranger. Year, 102,820,512.5. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The cliffs of Solherin stood as if carved from defiance itself, rising above the shifting plains where war had once redrawn the world. But now peace lingered, not from resolution, but from fatigue. The city built atop the cliffs forgot how it got there. Tradition replaced reflection. Safety became a cage with velvet bars. The wind-worn stranger arrived with dust in her cloak and questions in her eyes. She asked not for shelter, but for stories. The elders refused. The young watched. The stranger spoke only once that first week. Changing the world will change you first. Yet the stars remember what silence dare not speak. Then she vanished. Chapter 2. She reappeared at dawn, planting forgotten seeds in soil no one had touched in decades. She spoke to stone, sky, and forgotten bones. A child followed her, then another. She told tales that had no ending, only doors. The stranger at the threshold joined her, an archivist once tasked with preserving the false myths of the city, now a seeker of buried truths. Together they wove new rituals, not in defiance, but in remembrance. When the crops bloomed in abandoned soil, the council took notice. When the gates opened to let strangers share their stories, the city shifted. Chapter 3. The stranger left. No goodbyes, only win. The city no longer feared change. It celebrated questions. And beneath the new gathering hall, carved into the weather-worn stone, changing the world will change you first. Yet the stars remember what silence dare not speak. The stranger's footprints remain faint, but real, as are the seeds she left behind. Vital. The Echo of Desire. Here, 102,692,307.2. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Isle of Brave Mort educated its youth in silence. Not by choice, but tradition. Questions were reserved for elders. Answers were etched in stone. Only obedience bore fruit. The Echo of Desire was 17 when her voice returned. It came during a punishment ritual, a moment meant to quiet her curiosity forever. But instead of submitting, she asked a single, searing question. What if they were wrong? The rune keeper, an archivist who'd once broken a vow to preserve false histories, heard it and smiled. The wise don't seek all answers, he told her later. They know how to live inside the question. Chapter 2. She was exiled from the temple schools, but her question lingered. Other students began to ask, not rebelliously, genuinely. Why do we wear silence like a badge? Why do we fear our own stories? The echo traveled the isle, inviting questions, collecting regrets, teaching responsibility not as burden, but as freedom. The roomkeeper carved new tablets, not answers, but parables. Soon silence wasn't banished. It was redefined as listening, as presence, not obedience. Chapter 3. Brave. More change. The sacred halls now host debate. Its rituals now end with shared reflection. And in its central square, beside the shattered podium once used for punishments, grows the tree with bark carved by 1,000 hands. At its base, words for every age. The wise don't seek all answers, they know how to live inside the question. The echo still walks, and the questions never end, because that's how growth begins. Title: The Masked Smith. Year: 102,564,102.3. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the city of Brindlecrag, masks were not worn, they were assigned. At birth, the child received a mask forged by the High Forger. Each mask dictated one's role, one's destiny, one's value. Removing a mask was treason. The mask-smith had once crafted these relics, until he carved one for a boy, who wept as the final clasp snapped into place. The child's voice vanished. His eyes dulled. The mask-smith never forged again. He disappeared into the hills, where he began crafting something new, masks that came off. And in a cave lit by embers, he met the memory weaver, a wanderer who collected untold truths. Loud lies, she said, often guard truths too tender to be seen. Chapter 2. Together, they forged masks from bark and song, each one a tool, not a prison. They returned to Brindlecrag with a wagon of laughter-shaped porcelain and sorrow-painted wood. At first, the people mocked them, then tried the masks, then cried. One boy removed his assigned mask and said, "I didn't know I had a voice." The council declared them heretics, but the crowd did not disperse. They danced. Chapter 3. Now, Brindlecrag no longer assigns masks. It teaches mask-making and mask-breaking. Children craft their own, and remove them when needed. In the city square stands a statue not of a face, but of hands open, cracked, holding nothing. At its base, loud lies often guard truths too tender to be seen. The mask-smith still travels, not to give people masks. To remind them they don't need them. Title: The Beast Tamer. Year: 102,435,896.9. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the circus city of Creel, boundaries were a joke and the best punchlines hurt. Performers flung insults like roses, and affection was measured in chaos. In Creel, if you couldn't take the heat, you were the roast. The Beast Tamer was once the star attraction. She tamed laughter like lions, but when a prank left her in tears mid-performance, and the audience clapped anyway, something shifted. She left the ring, moved into a wagon without wheels, painted the word enough on the door. The Spiral Keeper, once her stage partner and master of elaborate misdirection, watched from a distance. And when he knocked, she said simply, "Heartache speaks and riddles listen deeply, and the lesson will reveal itself." Chapter 2. The Spiral Keeper thought it a metaphor. It wasn't. A week later, the joke books began whispering. Props turned to confessionals. The animals refused to perform, unless spoken to kindly, and the audience. They began heckling the hecklers. The Beast Tamer returned, not with a whip, but with a boundary rope literally. She drew a line on stage, and anyone who crossed it without consent was transformed into a mime. The Spiral Keeper crossed once, spent 2 days in mime purgatory. He came back with tea. Chapter 3. Creel evolved. Acts required permission. Clowns carried apology cards. The audience signed empathy waivers. Comedy didn't die. It grew teeth and ears. The Spiral Keeper became her opener. Only jokes approved by the Elephant Council. And at the center of the great tent, in gold foil letters on the curtain, reads, "Heartache speaks, in riddles listen deeply, and the lesson will reveal itself." The crowd still laughs, but now it also listens. Pio, the broken champion. Here. 102,307,692.1. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the heart of Caldwin, every festival honored the champions, those who had given everything in service on the city. But few remembered the price. The broken champion had once held that title. He returned from a war that never ended, not on the battlefield, but in memory. He lived quietly now, sweeping the old amphitheater where his name once echoed, until one day he found a child there, bruised and silent, running from conscription. He didn't speak. He simply handed the child a cloak and whispered to give Maurice to learn you were never running out. The flame that listens, a wandering midwife and poet, overheard. She stayed. Chapter 2. Together they reopened the amphitheater, not with pageants, but with stories. Wounds became scripts. Sacrifices became songs. Children who had lost siblings to the same war turned to speak names no longer spoken. Alduin listened, but the council did not approve. They threatened to silence the champion again. He stood before them not in anger, but in offering. I gave once for glory, he said. I'll give again for truth. They exiled him. The amphitheater remained open. Chapter 3. Years later, a monument appeared beside its gates. No figure, just a flame carved in stone, flickering in design, at its base wrapped in vines and time, to give Maurice to learn you were never running out. Yet the stars remember what silence dare not speak. The child he saved runs the place now, and the champion, he watches from afar, always listening, always giving. Title: The Soul Keeper. Year: 102,179,486.6. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The fortress of Viral stood proud on a mountain of glass, gleaming, unbroken, impenetrable. Its leaders spoke in decrees, not dialogue. The outside world saw order. Inside, people saw walls. The Soul Keeper had once been the High Archivist, keeper of names, titles, lies. But she grew tired of keeping records of oaths never honored. So she stepped down, not into retirement, into rebellion. She took nothing with her but a single phrase carved on stone. Walls meant to shield also become tunes for connection. The flame dancer, once her fiercest critic, now exiled for refusing a royal command, found her gathering stories from forgotten soldiers. And he listened. Chapter 2. They returned not with fire, but with truth. The Soul Keeper held open forums in abandoned cisterns. She confessed her own lies first, then invited others. Farmers came, guards came, even nobles arrived in disguise. Viral's council panicked. Truth spread like wildfire that didn't burn. It warmed, healed, united. The flame dancer turned ruined pauses into storytelling circles where laughter and regret held equal weight. The council offered the Soul Keeper her title back. She declined. Chapter 3. When a famine struck, Viral expected collapse. Instead, neighbors organized food routes. No one waited for orders. They remembered the stories. They remembered each other. The fortress walls cracked not from attack, but from song and sorrow. The gate was open that had not moved in centuries. Outside, the people of the lowlands waited with offerings. Not war, welcome. Now etched into the stone of the once locked gate, lit by eternal flame, are the words. Walls meant to shield also become tunes for connection. Fire still stands, but now its doors swing wide. Title: The Whisper That Endures. Year: 102,051,281.8. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. Dwelgren was a town of polite segregation. Everyone smiled, but no one mixed. The red roofs belonged to the artisans, the white stones to the scholars, the soot halls to the laborers. Each group toasted themselves nightly and toasted each other rarely. The whisper that endures was a jester uninvited, unaligned, unwanted. Her satire was scathing, but only the children laughed. She painted her face with all their colors. Her home had no roof, only a stage. One night she slipped a letter under every doorstep. It read, and opens the doorway to transformation if you walk through it. And by morning, every signpost was turned backward. The shield without allegiance. A retired town guard, tired of watching fences rise, helped her turn more. Chapter 2. The mayor banned colors. It didn't help. The whisper performed history backwards, depicting founding lies as gospel and gospel as fables. The crowd laughed, then paused, then asked, "Why do we never share bread?" The shield built a table long enough for every family. Some refused to sit, most didn't, and soon traditions collided like spices in stew. A bit messy, but delicious. Chapter 3. Dwelgren didn't erase its old divisions. It painted over them, literally. Every wall became a mural, every child a critic, every elder a student again. And in the central square, near the garden once called neutral, a plaque whispers beneath the wind. Pain opens the doorway to transformation if you walk through it. The jester walks still, but now she walks with company. Title: The Lone Veteran. Year: 101,923,076.3. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The village of Ember lay in the shadow of a forgotten battlefield. Children played atop craters, and harvests grew where warriors once fell. The elders refused to speak of the war. They called it the Silence Pact. But the lone veteran remembered. He spoke to no one, only to the grave. Markers he built from wind-polished stones. Then came the girl with questions, the eyes at the edge. Named for her constant gaze toward horizons no one else dared look at. She asked about the rusted swords, the broken flags, the names lost to ash. The veteran finally answered, holding what cannot change steals from what can. And so she listened. Chapter 2. They walked together past burial mounds and sunken trenches. He told stories, not of glory, of the loss, of mistakes, of comrades who sang too loud and died too young. The girl wrote them all down in a book bound with twine and ring. When she read one aloud in the village square, silence fell, not in fear, in reverence. The elders tried to stop her. She gave them the book and left. Chapter 3. Seasons passed, and the elders built a monument not of stone, but of stories. Children were taught the songs of the fallen. The wind carried verses of apology and remembrance. And one day, the lone veteran stood at the edge of the village, ready to leave. The girl returned, now grown. You taught us what we didn't want to remember, she said, but now we won't forget. At the village's center, beside a tree once struck by lightning but still growing, a plaque reads, holding what cannot change steals from what can. And every spring they sing, for the past, and for the seeds it left behind. Title, The Keeper of Cosmic Law. Year, 101,794,871.6. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The village of Corfun ran on order wheels that turned with precision. Bells that rang without error, and laws followed with the rhythm of breath. Everyone knew their role. No one knew their neighbor. The keeper of cosmic law had once been a philosopher priest, revered for interpreting the unseen structures that bound life together. But now, he merely tended the small library near the outer gate, muttering verses to the wind and copying scrolls for children no longer taught to read. Ignored souls become storms, he once told a baker who forgot to say hello. That day, the wind shifted, and a storm began to rise. Chapter 2. The gate that hungers, an orphan who spoke in riddles and slept beneath abandoned arches approached the keeper with a question. What happens when the law forgets why it began? The keeper paused and wrote a new law. Balance begins with listening. He posted it in the plaza. It was removed. So he wrote another, and another. Soon the board filled. Some laughed, others read. The merchant hosted a debate. A child rewrote one verse in crayon, and the wind howled louder. Chapter 3. The village didn't fall. It exhaled. Now, every law is voted upon in song. No voice too small, no soul ignored. In the center of Corfun, a wind chime of paper and ink comes beside the fountain, carved into the stone beneath. Ignored souls become storms. The keeper still writes, and the gate still waits. But now so does the whole village.